Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dave King, and as you can see from the slide, I am Head of Technical Integration for the BBC. My colleague David and I are just going to spend about 20 minutes or so just to talk through the work we've been doing over the last 18 months or so in delivering services to the audience and the changes that we've made to some of the processes and the technologies in particular to deliver those. Here's a bullet point of the agenda. I'm going to cover the first three areas about who is Audience Services, who are we, what do we do, what our challenges are and what our aims are, and then I'm going to hand over to David to do the next two bullets, and then I think between us we will tie off the end about our future. We hope what we say will provoke some discussion and some debate, and I think we're hoping to leave about 5 or 10 minutes at the end of the presentation for any questions from you. So, BBC Audience Services. I work for a department in the BBC called BBC Audience Services. We're part of the Marketing and Audiences division. And basically, the department I work for is responsible for all contact from our audience. We get quite a lot of reaction, as you can imagine, from the various programs that we deliver. And it's our job, in collaboration with Capita, to handle all those contacts and, when necessary, respond back. I say it's a collaboration. Capita have been working with us now, I think, for probably about 12 years as the frontline contact centre, the first point of call if a member of the audience wants to contact the BBC. Where the BBC comes in is if there are any sort of complex inquiries or complex complaints or anything is escalating, we take the second and sort of third level of those inquiries. But it's very much a collaboration. I said Capita have been delivering the this contract for about 12 years. In 2009, we underwent a re-procurement of these services, and Capita was successful in re-procuring for another 9.25 years. And part of their proposal at the procurement was basically to sort of rip up the operating model that they were using and start again. Put new technologies in, which would be future-proofed, that would meet our sort of wider set of services and requirements. And that work happened over late 2009, early 2010, and I think we've just completed our first year in using the new technologies and the operating model. There's a bit at the top about the BBC's mission, which I think most people are sort of aware of. Our mission is to enrich people's lives with programs and services that inform, educate and entertain, provoke discussion and provoke contact, really, to the BBC. What do audience services do? We have a wide variety of services within audience services. People can complain, obviously, about programs. They can inquire. We get loads and loads of inquiries about, what was the piece of music that was played on the edition of Coast last night, to where can I get that dress that I saw on Strictly Come Dancing. We provide ticketing. We obviously need audiences for shows, and we provide ticketing, free ticketing for shows. So you can imagine when Strictly Come Dancing comes around, you can imagine the hundreds of thousands of requests we get for that need to be handled. BBC Tours, we have a service by which people can purchase a tour of BBC buildings and go and see studios, which are very popular. And there are a number of other smaller services that sit beneath that as well. Action lines, SMS contacts for teenagers on a Sunday evening listening to Sunday Surgery, and a few others as well. BBC operates 24/7, 365. We're a 24/7 broadcaster, So we needed a partner who could be able to deliver a 24/7 service to us. We do get people contacting us in the dead of the night, albeit not huge volumes, but we do get people contacting us, and they expect us to be there. If they're watching something at 2 in the morning, they do sort of expect to be able to pick up the phone and contact us. We broadcast across a variety of different platforms now. It's just not radio and TV. You know, we broadcast via the web, and we're increasingly looking at services and products on mobiles. iPlayer, for instance. I think the last time we did a count, I think, to give you an idea of the size of this, if you were to add up all the hours of broadcasting that the BBC does every hour, for 1 hour there are 56 hours of programming for every hour of the day. So this is the kind of output and content we're putting out there, so you can imagine the kind of scale of reaction that we potentially can get. In terms of incoming contact channels, we can handle contacts from the public by email, SMS, phone, letters, web. We want to be accessible. We need to be accessible. The general public expect it. So we needed a set of services, particularly from Capita, that could handle all these incoming channels. Our challenge, and this is something that we put to all the bidders when we did the re-procurement back in 2009, we now have increased audience expectations. As I said, they expect us to be 24/7. They expect online access. They expect to be served quickly, and that's quickly through the likes of FAQs or help and support online, but they also expect any web form submission, letters, telephony contact. They expect a fast turnaround, and they expect it on mobile as well. Audience expectation of the BBC, we've noticed over the years that there has been a growing number of contacts from the general public. That trend is increasing year on year, and we set that challenge as well. We needed a system and a service that could handle increasing numbers of contacts from the general public, and we don't expect that trend to decline in the future. We also needed to set a service that could handle spikes. I mean, you probably all remember the Ross Brand incident that we had and the Det Gaza incident, where suddenly contact volumes rocketed, went through the roof. We were getting tens of thousands of contacts over several days. So we needed a contact centre operation that could suddenly mobilise and handle vast increase in contacts. Next generation, new and engaging services. We have a set of requirements today for what we think, how we can manage contacts from the general public. But the BBC is continually developing new products and services. Our future media team are looking at iPlayer. I mean, iPlayer was originally delivered over the web. Now you can get it on mobile, you can get it on the Wii, you can get it on a games console. And that will continue, so we need a contact centre that can help us support all these various platforms and maybe potentially receive contacts from those platforms as well. So in essence, we needed a sophisticated contact centre that can grow long term. We also want increased service quality and efficiency across all channels. I mean, I think that's taken as read, with any sort of re-procurement. We want things to be done better, we want things to be done more cheaply. We need to look at economies of scale, because the BBC, as you're probably aware, with a licence fee freeze and all the rest of it, we haven't got money to burn. All this sort of wraps up into something we called RQIV, and you probably noticed that on the first slide. RQIV was a sort of set of principles, if you like, that we embedded into the re-procurement, and it stands for reach, quality, impact and value. For the new contract, and what we request, we asked Capita to do, was to be able to increase our reach to the audience. We acknowledge that there are still pockets of the audience around the country that we find it very hard to make contact with or receive contact from. And we want to increase our reach to those people. So we are looking at platforms and content and delivery mechanisms that can get to those hard to reach areas. We want to increase quality. This is quality of our responses back to the public, and the quality of the operation, the quality of our processes, make them more efficient and better. We want to deliver greater impact. We want to deliver richer content out to the audience. We want to engage the audience. We want them to get them come in to shows. We want to deliver, get more audience members into an increasing number of shows. And we want to deliver value for money. As I said before, money is tight, so we wanted to challenge Capita to come up with a suite of technologies and processes that could deliver value for money, not just now, but for the life of the contract. And as it says at the bottom, all this is underpinned by, we needed Capita to have a deep understanding of our audiences. Now I'll hand over to David to explain how it was all done.
Thank you, Dave. Good afternoon. I'm David Cooling. I'm the Client Services Director for BBC within Capita. I'm responsible for all the operation of the areas across that David outlined. I think it's key to mention here, in terms of the requirements. Does this sound okay? Wait for the little man to come and have a quick fiddle. Technical glitch. Oh, okay. Put that one off. I'll leave that one a sec. Can't see the pocket. Okay. We have contact. Is better? Yep. One of the things I think important to mention here, this slide here is looking at what the requirements of the system we had to deliver. I think it's very key to highlight that how we delivered it was Capita's choice. The BBC said these are the things you had to deliver. How you deliver it is your choice in the context of the service or the contract. As you can see, Dave talked about the audience being at the heart of the service, and clearly here, this is focused around the audience in terms of the requirements. You look at it, it could be any other sort of typical customer relationship focus. So around the side of the diagram, we have the things like complaints, comments and appreciation. Sometimes people want to say, oh, a member of staff is very pleasant or whatever. Also, for example, Dave talked around audiences going to watch shows, etc. So there's a function there for audience feedback to be captured and put back into the system. And another key requirement was the ability to do target marketing. So people from the BBC could send out emails to people with specific to say, this show's happening, you might be interested in those tickets. As David said, these requirements had to be delivered across all the channels that we've outlined before. So the telephone, web forms, even people still continue to write complaints or inquiries by letter, so white mail as we call it, and SMS in terms of texting. There are some very specific requirements here, at the bottom, around tours and ticketing. This is about getting people in to see shows, the ticketing that go with them, and also around visiting BBC buildings. And it's not just the famous ones at White City, there's a whole host across the UK. Our challenge in Capita was to integrate these various solutions to create using automated workflows to maneuver cases around the system that gave the audience a consistent message and a consistent solution across the various channels. And also from the BBC to have a flexible service for their audiences. So this particular slide sets out the non-functional requirements. So Dave mentioned, for example, that the BBC is a 24/7 operation. You can turn on the television, the radio, iPlayer at any time, day of the week or night. The service has to be available. All the coverage from web or the ability to pick up a phone and make a phone call has to be available. So therefore the system has to be completely resilient. It has to be there 24 hours a day. It can't say, sorry, we're busy at the moment, phone back later. It has to be available. Clearly we're a commercial organisation. We have a service level to deliver. Again, from our perspective, we have to deliver that service level, otherwise we have penalties for non-delivery. So again, yet another reason to make sure that system is resilient and available all the time. Clearly the data in the system is very sensitive. There's lots of personal data in that system. The BBC have very strict guidelines and regulations around data security, information security. And it's absolutely critical that the data is secure, access to that data is done over a secure method. So we have to comply with all the BBC regulations. Naturally, BBC is a public body. There are other regulations within the BBC. There's government regulations as well the system had to comply with. Payment card industry, there are standards about PCI, for example. We have to comply with those. We talked about scalability. So Dave mentioned that the number of audience interactions is going to grow. So we planned in this contract year-on-year growth. So the system is scalable to cope with that. But also there is the unexpected peaks that happen. We just have to be there ready to cope with them. Dave mentioned Strictly Come Dancing. That's a known peak. We know that demand for tickets to see Strictly will take the scale off the top of the paper. It's enormous. Normally the graph's like this in terms of ticketing demand, but once or twice a year, it's up here. And we know that, we plan for that. Dave talked about EastEnders and the Christmas storyline. People react very quickly. There's another one, I'm sure some football people here who follow football. I think it was ITV rather than BBC, who just at the crucial moment of scoring the goal, cut to an advert. Fantastic. That drove lots of complaints. This system has to be there, available to cope with all those complaints that may come in. So it is scalable on two factors. One, long term, but also for the unexpected things that happen. It needs to be flexible. The BBC is a complex organisation. There are some very complex business processes that have to be followed within the BBC. So we have to make our solution flexible to work with that. And also flexible to continue to grow and change that solution as the BBC changes. Dave talked about bringing in new services. The last thing anybody wants to do is to build a system and then say, oh, we like this new service, and we'll say, oh, well, that's going to cost X million pounds. That's not a very good way of building a service. So we have to build in that flexibility. It's future-proofed. We have to be future-proofed to the end of 2019. Again, we take that risk of making sure the technology keeps abreast with all the things that are going on. From the BBC's point of view, they just get the same level of service available all the time for the next 9 years or so. And last but not least, value for money. Clearly, it has to be value for money to make this thing work. So this slide here sets out the ingredients, as we call them, or the key components of what the solution, how we built the solution. A number of them are household names. We all know them very well. So we know the Oracles of this world, we know Microsoft, Cognos probably, and Transversal. They are best of breed technologies. So they're tried and tested technologies. We have some other ones in here. At the bottom left, Tor Systems. This is a fairly specific supplier to do with ticketing systems and Tor systems, but it's crucial for us to fit that in. It's a best of breed, but it's a specialist best of breed. TK Dialogues, again, sort of on the very bottom of the screen, for us is really, really key. TK Dialogues allow us to put very specific scripting around the central CRM database. And I'll explain why that is so important in the next couple of slides. The challenge we faced was how to work out how to integrate all these together and make sure that we A, delivered the business requirements and B, met all the non-functional requirements. One of the things on here that I think is really important to highlight is the Office Communicator product on the top right-hand side. Dave mentioned before that we work together as a collaborative team. The way the contract works is we have a team, a contact centre in one location, the BBC are in a different location, and we have a group of home workers who are, clearly by their nature, based at home, separate from the office. They have to collaborate together. They have to be seen to be working as if they're in one team in the office and can see each other. So Office Communicator delivers some really important things for us in terms of the ability to use webcams, share documents, have messages, instant messages and conversations with one or two or three people as if they were in the same room. So for us, that's a really key part of the system and important in terms of the flexibility of the solution. So we're talking about the cloud computing. So most of what we had on the first slide are delivered in the cloud in some way, shape or form, but we've highlighted these 5 here as being the ones that probably most exemplify what the cloud is all about. So the things like we can access these solutions, these pieces of software from anywhere. The capability, the quantity, the capacity is on demand, up or down. It's done in a secure and safe fashion. Access to the data is secure. Behind it sits a completely managed, completely resilient infrastructure in order to keep this up and running all the time. So, this is the solution. This is how it ended up. It looks complex. This installation of, right at the heart of it, is a Microsoft Dynamics CRM solution. And it's probably one of the largest ones in terms of implementations. It took 7 months to build this, so it looks a lot, and we did it in a fairly rapid time. The key really is to note that CRM is at the heart of this. And if you look at all the blue arrows around the screen, most, if not all of them, either start or end up in that CRM box, okay, some way, shape or form. If we just talk through a couple of scenarios, I mentioned about scripting and TK dialogues and why they are so important. If you take, for example, a member of the public wants to complain, EastEnders don't like the baby storyline on Boxing Day or Christmas Day, how do I complain? So they phone up a dedicated number, the system recognises the number that's been dialed and will automatically pick up for the operator the right script in order to pick the right questions in order to capture the data to put into the CRM process. The person who receives the call doesn't have to work out what is it you're talking about. They know exactly what it is by the number that's come through and the script that then gets presented to them. They go through the process, they capture the data, it gets logged on the CRM database, and then it goes into a queue to be picked up by a caseworker. It could be a different reason. It could be a follow-up call from Crime Watch or another television program, a different telephone number. So again, the person makes the call, the system works out the direct dial number, it says, okay, it's not a complaint, it's a Crime Watch follow-up. The system, again, will automatically pick up the right script to guide that user through. And that's absolutely crucial. You don't want to ask members of the public the wrong, unnecessary questions, especially if they're in a complaint situation. They just want to get things down quickly and move on. No one wants to sit there waiting 10 minutes to log a complaint. They want to do it quickly. So again, same process, into the CRM, case lodged, into a caseworker. We also have intelligent voice recognition, IVR. So if you don't actually speak to a call operator, the call comes in, you speak to the IVR solution, that gets transcribed from speech into character and into text, lodged in CRM, put in the queue, picked up as a caseworker. There's a recurring theme here. Things get put into the CRM process and carry on. We talked about phone, white mail. People still write quite a lot of correspondence, talk about things. Sometimes people find it easier to write things rather than have a conversation with a call centre person. So again, what happens is the mail comes in, we log the mail, we scan the mail, we convert it into text, put it into the database, and on the database is a scanned image of what the document was. And again, it then gets picked up by the caseworker. It's important to recognise those caseworkers may be capital people at the front line, but they then in the workflow, depending on the content of the case, may end up back at the BBC. The workflows are very complex. There are absolutely a myriad of different business rules we had to mirror here to make sure that the right cases went to the right people, either in the BBC or within Capita. And that took some time to do. One of the other large bits on the left-hand side is self-service. Dave mentioned that there is a drive to to give the opportunity for people to do self-service through the web. So we have a bottom left-hand side, things where you can have frequently answered questions, web forms to type in your questions or your emails, complaints and ticketing. Again, it all gets logged into the database and out for subsequent processing. The last box, which is key here, which we haven't talked about, is on the top right, just up here. Business intelligence, which is driven by Cognos, and that's the key. Everything we've talked about here is getting data into the system, chasing the case through. We all know the key thing is what comes out at the other end. So what does come out at the other end? What do the BBC get in the way of their solution? In two words, audience insight. They understand quickly what the audience is saying about their programming, be it television, radio, or whatever. This slide, for example, shows what is a typical daily management dashboard. So, as you'd expect, how many complaints versus inquiries were made yesterday? What are the top complaints in the last 30 days? What's the top complaint in the last 24 hours? What are the top inquiries? So these things happen regularly. And it's this output that actually guides the BBC in terms of what they do, how they change their programming, how they communicate with their audiences. But naturally, that's just regular reporting. Anyone who's ever used a system, there's a wealth of data in that database. BBC can run ad hoc queries, they can slice and dice that data to their heart's content to work out whatever they want to find about individuals in the data. They can get down to the nth degree. For example, me, David Cooling, they can find that I've done 5 complaints, I've requested tickets for Strictly, and I've been on a BBC tour. They can then use that information to start targeting their marketing. So it's a very powerful tool of how to interrogate that data. And that's absolutely crucial for getting the information out. There's a lot of information in there. It's the audience insight that's in that tool that is absolutely crucial for the BBC to get out. So I think Dave has given you some idea of the scale. For 1 hour of the day, there are 56 hours of broadcast content. The scale of things we have to cope with here is quite huge. This is one of the largest implementations of a CRM solution. In 10 years, we had nearly 60 million customer transaction records in that database. Okay, and it's growing. Each year, 5 million questions are asked and answered through FAQs. 77 million emails are sent out to audiences in terms of targeted emails. It's a phenomenal number. You can work out the maths yourself, but Dave says this isn't a flat solution. But if you just did a flat solution, 300 or 330 web mails or web forms a day, that's 1,000 a day. I can't work out the maths myself, but you can work that out. But it's absolutely phenomenal, the size of this operation. And it all sits around this flexible CRM solution delivering, replicating the business requirements of the BBC. So just to give you some idea of that, the numbers on this slide are all per annum. These are per annum numbers, with the exception of obviously the contact records, because that's 60 million that we've built up over 10 years. But the rest of them are annual figures. So again, shows and tours, 450,000 requests for tickets and tours is a phenomenal number. So that's really trying to give you context. We've gone through what the components were, we've gone through the requirements, gone through how we've done in terms of non-functional, the resilience bits, how they fit into the cloud, the scale of this solution. What I'd like to do now is hand you back to Dave, and we'll finish off the presentation with a little bit about business impact and then what the future holds for this contract. Have a microphone.
Thank you so much. Sorry. I think there's one thing here which we haven't really mentioned, and this is from an operational perspective. I mean, when we started working with Capita about a year and a half ago to better understand how, what kind of solution we're going to build, what is it going to look like, and I saw that spider diagram about how it all knitted together. I mean, it really scared me to death. But I think the interesting thing for me is, from an operational perspective, we have about 50, 60 users of the CRM system within the BBC. And we have about 200 users of SharePoint systems. And these people are not particularly technological. They can find their way just about around Microsoft products. But when they saw the Microsoft CRM and how it was presented, it didn't really give us much of a problem in terms of their ability to use it. They sort of grasped it fairly quickly. That's just something else that sort of popped into my head as I was listening to David. The training program was not particularly massive. And they've sort of engaged with it pretty well, which I think is a credit as well. Business impact then. These are just several things that since the implementation of these systems at the beginning of last year, some of the things we've managed to do. We've managed to implement new channels and services successfully. We're trying to move more and more people online, so we're trying to make better use of sort of self-service over the web, more FAQs. Online ticketing was a biggie. We're getting away from issuing paper tickets to issuing e-tickets and processing more stuff online. It's cheaper, it's quicker. We've managed to do that. I mentioned before that audience interactions are growing year on year. I mean, forget the spikes. More and more people are contacting the BBC about one thing or another. And it is still increasing as of last year, and we now have a system that can cope with that number of interactions. Automation self-service. In the future, we want to work with Capita to see, how far we can push self-service, get away from folk from actually calling Capita and get them online. And I believe we have a system here that's capable of being able to deliver that. We've just got to work out how we do that sensitively without upsetting the public, because there are core people out there that still want to pick up the phone and have that human contact. But we have a system here that will enable us to seriously look at greater self-serve. 24/7 operation, it is 24/7. The business intelligence one is quite interesting as well. We within the BBC are wanting greater and greater insight into what our audiences are doing, when they're doing it, what they want from us. And as David showed the dashboard of stats that came out of the Cognos system, we have a BI and an MI system that will give us sort of richer insight, and we can drill down more than we ever could. And just jumping to the quality one, 72% of Mori Poll rated customers, service is excellent. We run quarterly customer satisfaction. I mean, I think that 72% is probably a bit old now because it is sort of creeping up every quarter. So we're on the right way to delivering the quality for the audience member. These are the guiding indicators again. I mean, these still hold true, and I'm sure they will hold true for the future. But I think all the work that we've done over the last sort of year and a half, I think we can tick off each and every one of these. And just finally, the future. These are some of the key points that we're sort of thinking about going forward. We have a fixed license fee until 2016, and then we get a charter renewal. Who knows what will happen with the charter renewal? Growth in interactions is inevitable. Service expansion is inevitable. As I said before, the BBC is continually developing new products and services, and they come to us in audience services to say, how are you going to support this product? How are you going to support the audiences? And that's a sort of huge challenge for us. But I think the biggest point on here is change is inevitable. We know that. We haven't got a crystal ball about what's going to happen in 2, 3, 4 years' time. But we know we are going to need to change and adapt audience services. But I do believe we have a system and processes in place that will make it a lot easier for us to be able to be flexible and meet audience demands. Thank you very much.